Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this edition of Gun Guy Radio is supplied by LA Police Gear, lapolicegear.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 109 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Ryan Machad, filling in this week for Jake Challand, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. So first off, I'd just like to say congratulations to Jake on the new addition to his family, and enjoy the time off with your wife and your children and the newest addition. We have with us several guests this week. We have Handgun Newbie from the Practically Tactical podcast and video show. How you doing?
Good, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. This is really a pleasure. The first time you and I have gotten a chance to talk, so it's nice. And same thing, we have JW from the AR-15 podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Doing great.
Great. It's a pleasure to meet you. And as always, Carol, we've met before. How are you doing? Carol Salva.
So great. I'm so great. Yes, Carol from Fat to Fit. I'll finish. Sorry, because I interrupted you.
No worries.
From Fat to Fit HQ. And I want to congratulate the Challenge also. I'm so excited for them. So congratulations. All the Challenge. Very exciting.
Yeah, everybody's really excited. Glad to hear it. So, kind of move into the announcements. Then we're going to do our main topic, which is going to be new shooter frequently asked questions and also tips for shooting mentors. So, announcements. We have the great Bond Arms giveaway that's still going on. Bond Arms is giving away a Bond Arms backup in 45 ACP. I believe that's a fairly new addition to their lineup. So you're going to get an entry for every quality gun and gear review over at firearmsinsider.tv, and there is a format that you need to follow, so be sure to go to firearmsinsider.tv/submit, and you can look over there for the instructions for doing your review, and so, submit as many reviews as you want. You get an entry for every quality review of gun or gear. So the winner will be announced on May 4th, and all reviews must be submitted by April 30th. So be sure to go check that out and take part. And also, Brownells helps make this episode of Gun Guy Radio possible. Selection, service, and satisfaction. Find it all at Brownells. If you're doing any shopping at Brownells, be sure to head over to gunguyradio.com/satisfaction. So we're going to move into the main topic here, the new shooter frequently asked questions and tips for shooting mentors. So basically we've sort of compiled the list of some of the do's and don'ts. A lot of these tips will cover a lot of the questions that new shooters might ask. And we'll also sort of cover a few topics like people who are trying to instruct new shooters, how they should act as well, because you are working with a person who is unfamiliar with firearms, but as an instructor, you have to, be willing to understand that they may not know as much because they are, newbies to it, and, to have patience with them and stuff like that. So we'll discuss a few of those things. And then also we'll discuss Carol's journey into the firearms world, because she is currently in the process of familiarizing herself with firearms and hopefully towards buying a firearm for her family.
That's right. I have a lot to say, but I have a lot to listen to, too. This sounds like a great show for somebody like me, and anybody who's going to be working with someone like me. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so it's basically we're just going to have a sort of like a free-form roundtable discussion. Anybody's going to be able to jump in at any time. There's no real format in terms of that. So I'll kind of start off. With most new shooters, you're going to make the choice between using a long gun or a handgun, and typically that gun is going to be of a .22 caliber. That's usually what most new shooters start out on. Long guns can be easier for a new shooter to utilize, but They can also bring about issues such as the shooter's strength, because if it's someone like my wife, she may not have a lot of upper body strength, and holding like a heavy rifle may be taxing for them. So you may want to consider shooting off the bench, something like that. And mobility with the long gun, if they're going to be using it for home defense, say it's a shotgun and it's a really long, like a bird gun with a really long barrel, that may be an issue in terms of mobility. And then also, as they move up in the spectrum in terms of caliber, the ability to handle increased recoil, because most long guns above a 22 have a pretty stout recoil, especially if someone's not used to firearms. It's a whole different ball game compared to like a handgun, like a 9mm. What are you thinking, Nick, handgun newbie, in terms of that?
Well, I kind of relate it towards like my kids actually. For first time shooters. I start out all my kids. Well, of course, with obviously the safety stuff, and before then, even my 5-year-old can spout off, the 4 safety rules. But actually, going into the firing, all my kids start with a bolt action 22. That's where we start on a bench, just to start familiar. That's how I familiarized all my kids with firearms. Is start on a bench with a 22 bolt action, and then we'll go from there. And then once they kind of move up in stages, then we'll go to the 10-22 semi-automatic. And then I only have one kiddo that's actually onto handguns, and then I don't have a 22 pistol, and so she actually prefers the 40 over the 9. So that's how I know she's my kid. But I think that's kind of I personally I think the rifle aspect a little bit better. Not that there's anything wrong with a 22 pistol or handgun at all. If I was going to go probably the pistol route, I'd probably do a revolver, just for the simplicity aspect. I think I'd probably like that if it's their very first time shooting a handgun. But for me, I think a good way just to get them associated and used to firearms, bench with a rifle, bolt action, I think it's the safest way to go, and it's the easiest way to go, and it's the simplest way to go.
What are your thoughts, JW? I know I've had a few people who have been sort of intimidated by the AR platform, and where you're on the AR-15 podcast. What are your thoughts on that?
Right, I definitely follow along with similar advice as far as starting with a 22 or even an air rifle to get the safety basics down, to become familiar around it. I think one of the biggest things with new shooters isn't the recoil. We kind of make a big deal about the recoil. Any gun you're shooting, it's really not that bad. What turns people off or startles them is the noise. And so having really good ear protection, plugs, and then muffs on top of the plugs, I think that can make the first time shooting experience go a lot smoother. So it's that noise that kind of makes people nervous and makes them startled to pull the trigger. I definitely agree with the 22 starting off that way. Some of the, I guess, decision-making process would be what sort of a range you have available. If you just have like an indoor community pistol range sort of a thing where you rent like an hour at a specific lane, you might not have a place to kind of sit down the rifle and have your kid kind of saddle up to a bench or anything like that. It might just be a standing only sort of a facility. So you might need to make some different decisions based on what facility you have, because you might have to start on a pistol or something like that.
Right, yeah, and I had talked before in a different show about basically the difference between a handgun. Oftentimes, I've seen people who are, they know the 4 safety rules, but they are much more likely to accidentally muzzle sweep somebody with a handgun because it's a lot easier to do just where it's so short.
Certainly.
With a rifle, you got a lot more. I mean, I hate to say margin of error because there is no margin of error when it comes to safety, but you have that longer barrel. It's harder to not be cognizant of the fact that you're sweeping people with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you want to be definitely aware of with new shooters, because it's not like they don't mean to do it, but it's something that as in other facets of life you wouldn't be worrying about something like that, really.
Well, I can tell you just from experience where I am. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit. That in my process, we're going so slow because I've never owned a firearm. but we know we want one, and so I worked with a man here named Ross Archer in Houston, and he's the Pistolero handgun trainer, and he's extremely patient. And we spent a whole day before we ever went to the range, a day before that, going over all the rules and all the safety and all the parts. And we did start with handguns, and he was showing me he had 4 different guns, revolvers and semi-automatic handguns, but that was my goal initially, was I wanted a handgun for my home. So he had a lot of good points, but then when we went to the range another day, I thought I was being very aware of not pointing that at him, like you're saying, because he went over and over and over it with me, and he was very patient. But the fact that if y'all are talking about a bench, like just the table bench in front of you, is that what you mean? When we went to the range, there was a bench right in front of me.
Yeah.
That was super helpful to have them sitting there in front of me so that nobody was touching them while he was talking about them. And there was still one time that when I picked one up, I picked it up and I didn't mean to point it towards him, but it just happens, and he could stop me really quickly because everything was real controlled and in front of that bench. And he's a professional showing me my error. No, this, look what you did. And I think you're right. I think having the bench was super helpful. I can't imagine not having it and having to turn around, and that I'm sure it can be done, but it would have been a little more unnerving. And exactly what you say, JW, it was that sound. But he did have some great head equipment for me. But the recoil, he got me real comfortable with it, expecting more from this one than this one. So the recoil wasn't. Now, the guy from We Like Shooting, Jeremy Posderick, when I was in Ohio, I stopped by River's Edge Tactical, and he took me to shoot a couple of things, and he took a firearm, and we have it on video, that has the most recoil of anything he could find because he just, I think, thought it would be interesting to show me how much something could. It almost knocked me off my feet. He had to hold me so I wouldn't fall down. But again, if you're prepared for that, if the person you're working with, it was really a lot about preparing you for what to expect.
Right, definitely. And like we said, people do need to fire center fire. I know a tendency is to, start people out with 22, and they get comfortable shooting that, but don't neglect to show the new shooter center fire handguns as well, because more than likely when they do get a handgun for self-defense, they're not going to carry one that's a 22. They're going to want something at least like a 9mm or 380. So make sure they know how to handle those as well.
And I will kind of jump on one thing that JW hit on. I think sound, yes.
Yeah.
That's a really big thing, especially with kids, double mine up. But as well as, I go to an indoor range often, but I take all my kids always to outdoor. And I know not everybody can pull this off, but if you can go to a range where there's no one else, which can be hard, fortunately, I have a range where I can do that. But I think outdoor is far better than indoor, especially at the very beginning, to where you don't have to worry about echoes and other close shots that may distract them. So I think if you're outdoor, and usually when you're outdoor, there's a little more breathing room. So especially if you're training a new person, to where muzzle, discipline, usually there's a little bit of more of a leeway there, to where you don't necessarily have to worry about the person 2 feet from you. So I think sound, and that has tremendously helped when you're outdoors.
And that's actually a very good point, because I meant to say something about that. Like, I don't know how it is where you guys are, but up here in Maine, we have I have a place where I can shoot on a private range. No one else is going to use it. But also, we have gravel pits, stuff like that. And I don't know if that's something that you have in your state, but we have them all over the place up here. And most of the time, if you go up and ask the person who owns the gravel pit, they'll have a spot where they shoot, and they'll let you go down there as long as you take care of your stuff. And that can be an option if you want a private place to teach somebody, because I know it's hard to teach people at an indoor range where you get a shooter right in the next bay, or even an outdoor range like that.
Yeah, and we kind of got right into it. I'm not sure if we want to address how people even just get into the shooting sports to begin with. I think a lot of people will just kind of walk into a gun store. They're very overwhelmed, and it takes a quality gun salesman or owner of a shop to kind of make that process a little smoother for you, to take the initiative to connect you with trainers and things like that. But Carol, what's your, just kind of a condensed version of what your path has got, like how you've gotten into it?
Right. Well, I was really fortunate that I was part of this network, but my show is a fitness show, and so we don't talk about guns a lot on my show, but we have a lot of people who use firearms that come on the show, obviously, and so the fact that I knew, all the different Firearms Network shows gave me an opportunity to just kind of plug in and listen. And so that's how I first started getting interested. When I first got on the network, I was just like, I have no problem with firearms. I'm pro-firearm. I just don't have one. But the more I listened to different shows, and then some stuff happened in my neighborhood that was very scary, and our home was broken into, that you're just like, what, this is crazy. I should have something, and we should be trained, but properly trained, to own something and feel a little more secure in our own home. So then I really did feel completely overwhelmed, because none of you guys live around me where you could take me. And so I can show you now, one of the first things we knew was that we wanted to get some air guns to get like a realistic feel of guns before we owned one. And so first we bought a gun safe, and Crossman has these air guns. I'll show you. This is a semi-automatic full metal pistol. It's very cool. It's very realistic. I'm really kind of scared of it. We got all these air guns and we locked them right up, and they're still kind of locked up because we're treating them exactly like something. And they can be dangerous, These can be dangerous. So I have this. If you look behind me, I know not everybody's watching video, but if you're watching video, on my bear back there, and I usually have it locked up, but we thought it would be funny to put it on that big bear. That's a M4 style air gun. And earlier I was showing the guys, and they were like, "What is that?" I have this.
Carol's just been like pulling guns out of nowhere.
I have big guns from Crossman. These are awesome. This one is a semi-auto pellet rifle. Again, it's an air gun, but they're super heavy. This one is the heaviest one. This is the Optimus break barrel air rifle. I can barely lift it. It's metal. I mean, these are very realistic, and we're really when we're ready to even take these out, we're going to use what we're learning, because when I went to the range again, Ross Archer, and I didn't say his website. It's pistolerohandguntraining.com. He took me to the range and showed me everything super slowly. I mean, he just took all the time in the world. So I'm getting more comfortable, where now I think I can take these out and practice a little bit with the air guns. And again, they're so heavy. But that's where I am in the process. I did get a video from I'm sorry. I don't want to say the name of the company wrong, but it's a buying your handgun 101, but it's not been released yet. I'm going to do a review for it. It's called How to Buy a Handgun 101, and again, it's not released yet, but that was actually by Bond Arms, and so I'm going to do a review on that, and it just kind of takes you through, kind of like Ross took me through, the different types of guns, and it's all kind of just getting demystified. Like, where I am in the process is learning the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic, and if it's something you want to put in your purse, Ross brought up some good points about things that might hook on your purse when you're taking them out, and the pros and cons to different things, and why you might want a rifle for home defense. And so I'm at that point now where we're going, at the same time that we're going through learning about firearms and how they're made and everything and what they can do to the safety for my children. We're going through a program that Jeremy Posderick also told me about, called the Eddie Eagle program. The NRA puts that out for young children, and I'll put that link in the show notes. It's at eddieeagle.nra.org. And they send you materials, little workbooks and things to work with your kiddos to just keep reinforcing those safety rules. So that's kind of where we are. We went from completely overwhelmed to now we're calmed a little bit about it. It's really interesting. It's more me than my husband. My husband's, kind of leaving this to me because I have a little more interest in it. but he knows he's going to go through all the training and everything before we bring it into the house. So that's where we are.
Well, that air rifle you have, the one with the wooden stock, the one that's so heavy, that's actually you could use that for hunting like small game, squirrels and stuff. My brother has the same gun, and he uses it for squirrel hunting up here.
Really?
Yeah,
it's so heavy.
I think it shoots a .22 caliber pellet at like something like 1,200 feet per second.
It's amazing. I know it's amazing. That's why they scare me. And again, I locked them up because we're treating them all, like you said, it can do some damage, and we just want to be completely safe about everything.
And one of the biggest things I've noticed with a lot of new shooters. And like you said, Carol, you're kind of going into it slowly and cautiously, from trying to get every angle, cover every angle. And one thing that can be daunting are the prices of firearms. I don't know if you've noticed that they're somewhat expensive, the good ones. And, that can be daunting to especially, some cash-strapped new shooters. The thing I really want to stress, though, is to try to advise them against spending less on a defensive firearm. If you're buying a firearm for defense, you want it to be reliable, and there are great deals on quality defensive firearms, but just purchasing a poorly made, unreliable handgun, it's not ever going to give you a return on your investment. You can buy a Jennings, Raven, Bryco, whatever the hell they're called now, and in .380, and it may be a lot cheaper than a Ruger LCP, but an LCP probably also isn't going to maybe spontaneously disassemble in your hand either.
Oh my goodness, that happens.
It doesn't happen all the time with those guns, but there's a lot of stories of the slides made out of poor quality metal, and they shear off, and they're just. I would rather see people spend the few extra dollars, save up a little bit more, and get a quality handgun, especially for something you're going to be using to defend yourself and your family.
I would say that's perfect timing for. Look what happened in the news last week from the Vulcan company or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
That makes those cheap 50 caliber BMG rifles.
Yeah.
Well, that is what happens when you.
What happened?
There's this. Make it really short. There's this guy that changes firearm company a couple different times. Anytime anything goes bad, he changes his name. Vulcan something now makes 50 BMG rifles.
Yeah.
And there's a video of a guy firing it, and then something blows up, and you don't see. I'm assuming the bolt flies back or something, but I think his arm gets all torn up.
So what happened was the bolt lug sheared off from what reports are coming out. Bolt lug's completely sheared off, and so when that round went off, the bolt ejected out of the back of the gun and lodged itself in the guy's neck.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There were range masters on site, all that. They stabilized him until the EMTs got there, got him out. But it was a pretty serious injury.
Oh, how horrific.
I was doing a bunch of research on that when I saw that, and I guess there was another guy in Colorado that the same thing happened to him. I guess the company has changed names from, it was originally Hesse, and then it was Vulcan, and now it's Blackthorn with an E on the end.
Wow.
And I guess another guy in Colorado, he had his left hand over the top of the receiver, and it's the rifles are a shell holder design, meaning that you slide the cartridge rim underneath the extractor or underneath a holder in the bolt itself, and then slide the bolt and round all in one into the back of the receiver. And I guess the guy in Colorado, he slid the whole thing in, and he was just about to twist the bolt down to complete the lockup, and it actually set the round off before it was locked up. The bolt flew out back, hit him in the shoulder, broke his clavicle, and the pinky, ring finger, and middle finger on his left hand were sheared off when the bolt went and tore his 3 fingers off. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, the story is don't spend $1,000 on a 50 BMG rifle.
Yeah, definitely.
Same thing with handguns. Don't go out and buy a $100 handgun.
Wow.
And we're talking about kind of two different things as far as your first handgun in .22 long rifle or 17 HMR, some sort of rimfire entry-level cartridge. That's one platform, rifle, pistol, either way. But when you step up to to get the platform that you're actually going to be using on a daily basis
Uh-huh.
in your home or carrying it on your person. That's where you got to make sure to make some good decisions and save up for a while to actually put your money in a place where it's going to be a quality piece of equipment.
Well, yeah, y'all just made a case for that.
For sure.
Wow.
So, JW, what's some of the things you had? I see you had thoughts about gear. What's a few of the things you wanted to talk about in terms of gear?
I mean, you kind of asked me earlier. I shirked the question, but you asked about ARs. Obviously, the name nowadays is the modern sporting rifle. That's what people are trying to push just to get away. It's political, really.
Yeah.
But modern sporting rifle, they call it that because the AR platform, it's the most popular, best-selling gun right now in America. There's a ton of them, a ton of different makers. There's a ton of cool things coming out, but they're all kind of similar in the way that they operate. And so because of that, you're going to run into a lot of them on a daily basis if you're hitting the range, if you're going into a gun shop. If you're using your 22 at the range, getting proficient with that, there's probably going to be someone with some sort of AR. And so I think it's a great entry-level platform to step into after you are comfortable with your 22. If you want to go the long rifle route, you could either step way up into a very high-power deer rifle or something like that, but the ARs are much lower powder content, and so the round recoils less, noise is kind of comparable, but it's a very easy gun to shoot for the people just getting into the sport. You're going to run into a lot of them, so they're going to be on sale. People are trying to sell them, and most people that you run into at the range are going to be familiar with them. So,
and ARs are modular. They're really like, you got the 1022, which is like, you can do anything to, and the AR is sort of the same thing in the centerfire world. You can do anything to it to make it fit anybody, really.
Oh yeah. So yeah, when you start getting into it, you'll see pictures guys put up online of their ARs with 7 different lasers and lights and scopes and all sorts of crazy stuff hooked onto their guns. I would caution you to learn the basics before you get fancy. All those air rifles that you've got there, Carol, they've got iron sights on them that you can, there's no batteries, there's no magnification, nothing like that. There's just a simple sighting system, and that gets the job done. People win 1,000-yard competitions with iron sights like that.
Really?
So learn to use those, learn to use them well, but get comfortable with them, and then it's wide open. I mean, you could get a red dot, you could get magnified optics to make shooting further, easier, all sorts of things. But I would recommend to use the irons that are most likely going to come with your rifle, get used to them, get good with them, and then start saving up your money, because getting just kind of a cheap knockoff $40, $50 optic to put on top of your gun is going to cause you more trouble than it's worth. So take your time to get good with the rifle. In the meantime, save up your money, and then once you start wanting to get a little more fancy with the platform, I mean, you always hear the motto, buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
So cry that one time when you got to pay off the bill for that nice scope or red dot or whatever, rather than having to cry every time you go out and buy another $50 one because it keeps crapping out on you, because the recoil of the rifle kind of tears apart the inside of it. So
I have a question, JW,
Yeah, go for it.
about the AR. Someone told me that I might want to consider that for home defense, and I don't know. I might be getting things confused. They were talking about things that go through walls and don't go through walls. What are y'all's thoughts about that?
Yeah, definitely. You'll hear that's one of those things where people get very opinionated, and I wouldn't say that there's one right answer, even though every person with each of those different opinions thinks that they have it.
Right.
But yeah, that's one of the biggest concerns, is that when you fire a rifle, the bullet goes a long ways, and it's a powerful bullet because it's made to stop targets.
Right.
And so if you're, say, in a condo or an apartment with people next to you, if your bullets aren't hitting what they're supposed to be hitting, they could continue on a path where you don't want them to. But that's kind of going back to one of those 4 rules of safety, is that you need to know what your target is and what's beyond it. In a defensive situation, you might not be thinking quite so clearly to figure out everything behind your target, but every single one of those rounds that comes out of your bullet is going to have your name, social security number, address, and all the information that anybody needs to come after you in court.
Wow.
Because you made the decision to use lethal force. So it's a big kind of debate as far as, okay, is a rifle too much inside a house? Do you want to use a shotgun instead? Is a pistol the biggest you want to do? I don't really have the answer there. How about you guys?
A lot of the it's kind of weird because a lot of the the research you've seen on it isn't really like scientific research. It's some guy who set up a bunch of drywall and shot through it with a bunch of different guns to see what would happen. But the majority of the time when I see those tests, it seems sort of counterintuitive. Like the 9mm rounds will tear through like 4 or 5 different layers of drywall, and then someone shoots at it with a shotgun, and that buckshot or even birdshot tears quite a ways through, and then someone shoots at it with an AR, and it only makes it through maybe 1 wall. Because it's going so fast, it's such a light bullet, and it's so easily deflected or fragmented, etc. I guess. I mean, that would be my assumption.
There's a lot of complicated things that go into the picture of, I guess they're called terminal ballistics. Bullet size, shape, what it's made of, how many projectiles there are, how fast it's going, and that's why there's a whole industry behind it, and there's all these different bullets that you can choose when you go look at the gun store shelf.
Definitely.
Well, that's one of the things that Ross it made an impression with me, is that if you're going to be, you don't just want to get a gun so that you feel comfortable because you have a gun. It doesn't stop there at all. You need to go back to the range over and over and over again, get very comfortable, because when you decide to shoot it, you want to hit what you're shooting. You want to be comfortable in making that decision.
Exactly.
And that's one thing I noticed Handgun Newbie had here. You had written down training doesn't end after the training class. You kind of want to expand on that?
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly support everybody, take multiple trainings, don't ever stop trying to train. But that's something too. So let's say you're super cool and you take all these classes, you take a super operator class, go to a Jaeger class. That doesn't mean that after you're done with your super awesome class or basic or awesome, doesn't matter what it is, that okay, well I'm done and I'm just going to wait for training to my next class. It's you're at home doing it. The drills that you learn at training, all those drills are designed for when you go to the range, you can replicate them as well. So, there's numerous ones out there. Off the top of my head, I would say Corey 07 Inc. on YouTube has a lot of really good shooting videos. That's Range Time Tactical, where I've trained there as well. But those are the type of things to where that you just don't train when you're at a class. You bring those drills to your range when you go shoot, because you always want to go shoot with a purpose. Yes, it's fun to go out and just mag dump, but does that improve you as a shooter? No. You want to go out there and you want to work on either fundamentals or some sort of training. So don't just ever look at a class as that's your training and then you kind of abandon it. That doesn't help you at all. So definitely look to dry fire training when you're at home. Really help you get becoming a better shot, more accurate with whatever firearm you're using. There are more ways than just going to training classes to make yourself a better firearm owner.
I can see that, having gone to the range once, but a lengthy class outside of the range, and then the day we went to the range, and then again at Christmas when I was in Ohio, Jeremy spent time with me in the shop, in the gun shop, explaining things, and then out we went at a place outdoors, like you were saying, that he knew of, that we could shoot a couple of rounds of stuff. I don't feel, like I said, I know it sounds like I'm going so slow, but I don't feel comfortable yet at all. I think we're going to be going back again and again and again, because like you said, it's just like a starting point. I'm going to spend time again with Ross Archer because we know we didn't spend enough time. I don't feel like I just don't feel comfortable with all the information, comfortable with myself. I didn't do too badly. I saved the targets and everything. I did all right, but it's more about just getting comfortable with those drills that he gave me and the things. One of the real interesting things, I'm at an age where I'm nearsighted and farsighted. So I wore the little glow lady glasses for a while, and then I went and got the contact lenses where one is near and one is far.
Yep.
And the guy told me and I did that right around this time in December, where he was like, if this doesn't make you disoriented, this is a good option. And it didn't. It was great until I went to the range. I just so happened to go with the guy, and trying to sight like that with one eye for farsighted and one eye for nearsighted totally was it was really jacking with me. And so I went back, and it was only like another $60. I thought it was gonna be so much more expensive to get the bifocal contacts, and it wasn't that much more expensive. So that was a real interesting thing about age that I didn't think about, is sighting's very important, and your eyes being what you need and not playing tricks on you is very important. And again, him showing me that you're sighting up close, you're just getting the target in sight, so that you're really looking at here and here on the end of your firearm. Just everything he taught me, I need to go back and do more and more drills on that.
Well, I think Carol brought up a really, really good point, which is move at your own pace. I think that is absolutely critical to anybody getting into firearms, because, and it's on YouTube, it's on the internet all the time. Oh, they've never shot a firearm before. Oh, give them a Smith & Wesson 500, and see how they do. And of course, there was the girl in the news in Missouri, a month or two ago, ended up shooting herself.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's a really good point of do what you're comfortable with. If your first 100 times the range, you're only comfortable with the 22, stick with the 22. I think that is absolutely critical, because I've heard so many stories of guys that bring their girlfriend or whatever to the range, and be all macho, and here your first gun is going to be a 45 or a 40, and then guess what? They go there that one time, they hated it, and they'll never want to be involved with it again, because it was a horrible experience for them.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and that's that kind of is a good segue into the segment here on thoughts for shooting mentors, the people who are actually going to be teaching people how to shoot. And one of the biggest things I like to promote to people who want to say, oh, I can teach people how to shoot, is just try to understand where the new shooter is in the firearms world. To someone who is totally unfamiliar with firearms, it can be an overwhelming and for some a scary experience. They've spent their entire lives hearing about how dangerous guns can be if used improperly, but the key is not to brush off their concerns, because that's not going to help alleviate any of their fears, but to educate them so they're able to dispel the concerns on their own. That's going to get rid of their fears and their apprehension about firearms, more than just saying, oh, don't worry about that. And helping the new shooter to understand why there are 4 safety rules and how safe things will be if they follow them and ask questions, if they have any, will go a long way towards making them a lot more comfortable in the firearms world.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. It really is. It's really a case of being patient, and I have friends who told me they could help me, and I'll take you out to the range, and it's no problem. And not that they wouldn't have done a great job. It's just I did some research. I found somebody that's their job. He has tons of experience and lots of references, and I'm glad I did that. It's worth the investment to go to somebody who is super patient, has worked with new people all the time. It's what he does for a living. And I wasn't embarrassed. This is not, my buddy or friend or somebody. It definitely, the right mentor is important.
I definitely recommend trying to find someone like that, exactly like you're saying, an uninterested third party, because however exciting it might be to teach your wife or your girlfriend how to shoot, they're going to learn a whole lot better from someone else, just because it's not you, and just because there's nothing else interacting in that experience.
That goes with almost anything that you're trying to teach a spouse, right? We're not always the best at teaching our spouses and stuff.
And also, don't forget, if you're looking for an instructor, there are general handgun safety and basics instructors, and then there are other more niche instructors that like Grant Cunningham, he'll instruct on revolvers typically, or someone else, Rob Pincus, mostly is semi-autos, and they all have different areas, sections of the firearms industry that they work in, that there's their specialty. So if you're looking for a basic course, that's where I kind of get frustrated, because I've seen a lot of like at the local range here, you'll see people who have been hired to be instructors and just be a one-on-one session, and they'll get impatient with these people, and I'm thinking, this is a basic handgun course, and they get impatient when the person doesn't understand how the mechanism of the gun worked or how to get into a proper stance, and it takes them a few tries to get into that stance, and the guy gets impatient. I'm like, how is that helping that person learn?
Right.
To us, it's old hat. We know how the guns work. We know how to stand, stuff like that. But to new shooters in a basic course, it's a whole new world, and it's a lot to digest in a period of time. So make sure, if you're looking for an instructor, you don't go for someone who's going to teach you in a specialty type of thing. You want your basic one, but make sure that person's going to be, the patient type, to take the time to show you, here's how the gun works, here's how you get into this stance, and to not, chide you if you're taking too long to do so.
Very important.
So, Nick, what's one that you got here under your list? You threw a few more things in regarding training. What's next one you got there?
Well, some people may have a problem with, okay, I just spent, we'll say, $500 on a handgun, and then, there's this 2-8 class, it's $400. What's that? And for me, it's absolutely worth it. There are so many things done in training that you don't think of. I think, especially I'll generalize this as a self-defense aspect. I think, and I was guilty of this too, first getting in. It's okay, I'm going to get this gun, I'm going to be a good shot with it, and then if a guy kicks down my door, I'm going to just shoot him, and then there we go, I'm ready to go. There's a lot more to it than that. For example, like my first class that I ever took was mainly self-defense gear, but it was okay. You have to pull in your self-defense, and again, what's behind your target? Let's say in the layout of your house, the bad guy comes in, the kids are behind him. Your kid's room is behind him. So what do? So, you talk about like changing the trajectory of your bullet, or changing angles, and that's a lot of stuff that I kind of hadn't thought of. There are simple ways to greatly change the outcome of a shot, and that was one thing that you really can't overvalue training enough. It's so important, and you learn so much that you never would have thought of before. And I kind of make it, in a little saying would be, what makes a person more efficient with a firearm? Is it a bigger bullet, or is it a higher level of competency with that firearm? So the more training you do, the more better you will be. A lot of people say it as, I have, a Glock 17 with the 32 round mag. Okay, guess what? Someone that's tremendously trained with a 5 or 6 shot revolver, if they're that good with it, guess what? They'll win in some sort of fight or something. So the better you are with your firearm, the more you have trained, the better you will be. And kind of we hit on before, training doesn't end after your training class. And again, like we covered this part too, is find a good instructor, but I also say pick the right class. Don't be like, okay, well, I've been shooting for a couple years, I'm going to go take the advanced gunfighter 1 or whatever. Probably not the best way to go if you've never taken a training class. You want to go in, basic defensive pistol 1, then you work your way up. Don't just jump all in, because a lot of those classes expect prior training and to be 100% on board and up to par with what they're basing all their instructions off of. So, everybody talk about finding a good instructor, yes, but also make sure you go with the right class. I think that's very important too.
Definitely.
Prerequisite kind of thing. There's a reason.
Right. Most of them have that anyways.
Yeah.
But it's something that's, I think, important to look at.
Right. Okay.
And different instructors run things differently. I just signed up for something this summer that's going to be a shoot house class, and it's a pretty in-depth, advanced level thing where you got to have body armor on, and you got to have a tourniquet on your body and a first aid kit. And it's not for everybody else, it's for you if something happens to you, because you're running through a house and there's multiple people firing off rounds, and it's a higher stakes environment. And so some guys are great about the prerequisites and looking into your background and making sure that you're not going to put anybody else in the class at risk.
Wow.
Or yourself. but some guys, it's just an entry-level basic class, and that's great if they take the time to really prioritize safety. I train with a guy locally in Pittsburgh, and his safety brief, if it takes an hour, hour and a half, sitting on chairs, kind of going over things, he's willing to make that a part of his 8-hour class, because that's really where things start.
Right.
And keeping with when you mentioned a bigger bullet or a better ability to hit your target, I've had people get on me on my show when I said that I carried a Colt 1903 and 32 ACP. I may be a 32, but I can hit exactly what I want with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm comfortable with it. So that's going to be the ability to place your shots and the ability to be accurate and comfortable with your firearm is going to be much more important than, I carry a 454 Casull snubby in my pocket and I can, so.
Doesn't matter how big the bullet is. If you don't hit your target, it doesn't matter how big your bullet is.
Right.
I had touched on a couple little getting comfortable things as well in the show notes. I mentioned just don't rush into a new technique if it doesn't make you feel comfortable. For me, a big thing when I started carrying was having a round in the chamber. It just didn't make me feel comfortable having that gun hot and ready to go. I shoot Glocks. I love Glocks, and there's no external safety to keep it from when you pull that trigger, that gun goes off. And so as a new shooter, as a new concealed carrier, that made me nervous. And so I wasn't going to let anybody pressure me into doing something that didn't make me feel comfortable.
That's good.
Spent a while doing it, a couple months carrying on a daily basis, and got much more comfortable with the platform, confident in the gun, and things changed. I developed new skills with the gun. A couple of the things here, dry fire. I don't know if we've touched on that, or if your instructor, Carol, mentioned that, but there's a lot of things that you can do in the house in between range visits to keep working on specific skills, whether that's trigger control or your stance or your sight picture or drawing from a holster and obtaining that sight picture. There's a bunch of things that don't involve firing around.
Okay.
So obviously you got to continue your safe practices with pointing the gun only in safe directions, and I think the biggest thing is to make sure that all of your ammunition is in a separate room. Just keep it away from your guns.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Anytime you're going to start pulling that trigger, that ammo needs to be somewhere else. And then one kind of tip I guess I would connect to that is try isolating one skill and focus on it intently. So if you start with your stance, you make sure your stance is good to go, you fire a couple rounds at the range. You start shooting a couple rounds, you're going to start forgetting about where your feet are, and you're going to think about something else. So whether you write it on a piece of paper or whatever, focus on that one skill and make sure that's perfect or better by the time it comes around to work on something else. Once you start getting those individual skills all tied up and ready to go, start combining them. And so things like that keep your range visits fresh and keep you dialed into those fundamentals that are going to carry over from pistol shooting to rifle shooting to slingshot shooting to whatever.
Yeah. Okay, that's something I think with the air guns here. There's a lot of things that I can practice, even though, like we said, some of these can do damage. Anything can. I can practice a lot of things with these, the weight of them and everything, between range visits and stuff.
Right.
Backyard kind of stuff. What do y'all think about laser pistols?
Like the CERT training pistols?
Yeah, for new people.
Those are really good. I mean, it's kind of it can be daunting for some people, like we said before, because I think they run like $199, I think.
It's a great tool to have in the tool bag if you're an instructor.
Yes.
Or if you work at a gun store or something like that, to have something like that on the shelf that you could either loan out or let somebody get some time behind the trigger in the shop with. It's kind of tough to make that big first purchase if it's going to be your first gun.
Yeah.
I don't have any experience with these. I don't know if you guys do. I've seen the cartridge inserts that you can put in like a 9mm cartridge insert that the laser dot shows through the chamber, through the barrel every time the hammer falls. And I think, I mean, if those work well or as good, that would be more appropriate because you could actually use the handgun that you would be carrying and just use that cartridge.
You're talking about the laser lights?
I'm not sure. I've seen them. They look like a cartridge, but they're like a laser pointer that go off every time you pull the trigger.
Okay.
Is this the cartridge, or is this the magazine?
That is your magazine.
So that's not what you're talking about.
If you live in California, it's a magazine clip.
Look how
armory,
realistic that is.
bunker.
That's so realistic. Okay, but that's not a cartridge. So you're talking about like on a revolver?
Cartridge, most people would term it the bullet, but it's like the metal cartridge case and the bullet all in one. The thing that you load into the gun.
Okay, the thing that you load into the gun.
For you, all it's going to be is a solid piece of lead.
Okay.
Because a combustion simulant
happens
with compressed air.
The bandwidth for this edition of Gun Guy Radio is supplied by LA Police Gear. LAPoliceGear.com.
As always, Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by LA Police Gear. You can head over to LAPoliceGear.com to look at all the great products they have there. And this week, the LA Police Gear product spotlight is going to be the in-one iPhone 5 black case with toolkit. This is a really cool design I found. It's an iPhone case that also houses 5 small tools for everyday use. It includes a blue and red pen, a Phillips and flathead screwdriver, a kickstand, I'm assuming to keep your iPhone propped up to watch videos on, a nail file, tweezers, scissors, and a toothpick. So it's a really great way to have a few extra little tools handy and not have to carry another complete kit. So be sure to go to lapolicegear.com and check that out, and along with all the other great items.
Meet the lumberjack whose flannel was out of whack. Freedom to move is what he lacked, even when woodland creatures attack. Until they put Duluth free swinging flannel on his back, with armpit gussets to whack and hack. Now he's known as a lumberjack. Duluth Trading free swinging flannel. Swinging made easy. Flannel made burly. Get it only at DuluthTrading.com.
So Carol, we're kind of wrapping up the main topic here. I'm sure you probably have a few questions after our discussion. So what are a few questions you might have?
Well, at this point, like I said, just to back up real quick, what I thought we were going to do, I'd love y'all's feedback on this, and what we're doing is different. I thought we did a whole family meeting about getting a gun, and I have kiddos that are 12, 10, and 8, and there was all kinds of questions from them. That was a good meeting, but then we went to train everybody on safety, and I'm at the same time learning with them. And that's when we kind of shifted gears, because I was like, what are we going to do here? I'm going to make them memorize these rules and then we're all going to go out to the range together. I just didn't feel comfortable. That's when I told my husband I would really like to take the lead and get really a lot more comfortable with this on my own, so that when we bring the kids, even with the air guns in the backyard, I don't feel so new like them to everything. And so I don't know what y'all's experiences are telling folks how to step into it, but I guess I'm wondering, the other thing I'm wondering too is about my kiddos. We're doing this Eddie Eagle materials that they've sent us, and we're beating these rules into their heads, and again, we're going to start with air guns, but I haven't really found any classes, any real classes. I know Ross Archer, the Pistolero handgun guy, we could hire him to do a private class for my kiddos. But I don't know, what would y'all recommend for people with children?
Well, I think that I might have to step in here, because am I the only one with kiddos here other than Carol?
Yeah.
Not yet.
And Jake's almost caught up to me, I should say. I think was his whole goal behind this one. But it's a difficult question to answer. For one, is you have to judge your kids separately, and what I mean by that is you may have a 15-year-old kid and a 7-year-old kid, and you may feel more comfortable with the 7-year-old, having, being able to shoot your M&P9 than your older kid. I think you really have to judge each individual kid's firearm maturity individually. I don't think you can assess it off of a family base. That's my personal opinion. So based off of that, I got one fussing right now actually. That's how I kind of judge it. Is you need to look at each individual kid separately and judge them where they are. For me, it's safety is kind of a big thing, and I may have to let you ask more questions.
We're kind of bouncing off of that, though. It also depends. Like he said, the maturity level of the kid is very important because the safety is number one, and essentially, like we said, I said a few weeks ago on my own show, there's no taking back a bullet. There's no do-over. There's nothing. So.
Right.
If you want your children to really be appreciative and enjoy the sport for as long as they're alive, safety is going to always be number one. That's always going to take the place of anything else. And, build upon that. Kids are always a lot easier and not so much eager, but that they learn easier than adults. I mean, they have no preconceived notions. So make sure you start them off good the first time. Don't let them develop the bad habits. Someone like me who didn't really have any formal firearms training when I was a kid, I developed bad habits and I had to correct those. And it's a lot easier, believe me, if you just don't start with bad habits at all. So
can you give us an example of what you mean by that?
My first firearm was a Smith & Wesson Model 66 snubby revolver and .357 Magnum, and the first gun I ever shot, I loaded 125 grain duty loads into it, and there was like a 4-foot-long flame that came out of the gun, and it kicked like a mule, and I had a flinch that was really bad, and I actually had to work with 22s for a while to actually get rid of the flinch, the anticipation of it. I did that when I was 15 years old, worked through the flinch with the .22 pistol, but that's just an example of one thing that you can develop. It can, something like that can impact your trigger control. You anticipate the shot and you can jerk it off to either left, right, high, or low.
Right.
Something like that. I mean, any other examples, guys?
Well, I've also learned that after you have kids, they can interrupt podcasts. But I would say something too is, I have 5 kids, and only 4 are of shooting age. But for me, it's first time out. I take them out individually. I think that's very important because, especially when they're younger, because again, safety is a concern with new shooters and especially kids. Because, and I would also say too, because if they watch TV, they get a very skewed sense of firearms, and that's a whole nother topic of discussion. But I take them out each individually, and until I got comfortable with all my kids of where they're at safety-wise, I didn't take them out until once I was comfortable with them safety-wise, then we all went together as a family, which is a great time. But before that point in time, I really had to make sure that they're on board with all the safety things because it's very important. Because my other kids, obviously, and other people. But that was one thing that I did with my kids was individual until I felt they were comfortable enough, and then we'll go out together, with the group of us together. So that was one thing that I did.
That's
and then as well
excellent advice. I really had never thought of that, and that seems so basic. Go ahead, sorry.
And plus, too, I mean, do you want to take 4 kids out to a range, or you just want to take 1? What's a little easier? But just for the overall, because the goal is to go out and is to learn. It's easier to learn when you're doing one-on-one than one-on-one with 3 kids screaming behind you.
Right.
So, when's my turn, or, 1 kid wandering off. So, but, yeah, getting them comfortable to be around other people with firearms, I think, is a very important key. And then as well, I think you need to, and that also goes with judging them on each individual's maturity basis. I think that's very important. Otherwise, family stuff, again, I think having safes is important. Obviously, if you keep a loaded firearm and it's for self-defense, I would look into some sort of quick access type of vault. And this is more gear stuff, which can be a whole nother show. But I think that's really all the family type of stuff. Otherwise, you just continue to follow the same rules that you go by. And again, do what you feel comfortable with. So if you don't feel comfortable having any firearm that is loaded anywhere in your house, even in a safe, then if that's what you're comfortable with, that's what you do. Don't ever feel like you need to break what you feel is comfortable based off of some pressure or something that you heard or somebody told you to do. You have to do what you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, Carol, let me ask you, I noticed you said something earlier in terms of action type for the gun that you wanted to buy. Do you have any questions about that, like, revolver versus semi-auto? And that can be one hell of a debate. So, I mean, just general.
A whole other show maybe, but I can tell you I'm still in the process of thinking about that because, the whole thing about, at first I was envisioning just something on my nightstand that would be locked away during the day but on the nightstand overnight and, home defense. But then when I got a little more comfortable, even after just one day at the range, I thought I really kind of want to carry something. And so now I've kind of changed my thinking in what makes sense and how I'm going to carry it. And y'all know that my show is a fitness show. And, we're not all real fit over there. We're just trying to talk about trying to get more fit. And one of the topics that came up was, what about when we're running trails? And I never run, and I walk now. I don't run. But with my girlfriends, we never go by ourselves. But the question came up from some of the female listeners is, how do you carry in a trail or with the athletic clothes on, but they have solutions for stuff like that. There's, these bands that are big elastic bands. Zach from Lone Wolf, just really from thegunbench.com, Zach Carlson was reviewing one for us, and how it really feels to run with something like that. And then I'm thinking this time next year I wouldn't mind going hunting with my family because, so doing, I want to look at a rifle. I don't know. It's like I'm not overwhelmed. I've just completely opened up a whole different thinking of what I thought I was going to be doing. That's kind of why we're stalled.
If I could make a suggestion, I know people who usually listen to me will probably say, why didn't you recommend a revolver? But I'm going to say, my recommendation in terms of like a something like a self-defense, like a centerfire handgun, would be something like either a Glock, obviously, or if like a Smith & Wesson M&P, mainly because you have the different grips and you can use the back straps and, say, one back strap is too large for your husband and one back strap is too small for you or something like that. You have a sort of a margin of error where you can change those out and try to get the best fit for both of you. And then also if, eventually you got your concealed weapons permit, you could like purchase a Smith & Wesson Shield and have that same manual of arms that you have with the larger M&P that you use for your house gun with that smaller shield that you use for your concealed carry gun, and everything, the whole manual of arms just transfers over to that smaller gun. And that can be said for, most of the larger and smaller guns like the Glock subcompacts and the compacts, same manual of arms.
What is the Shield? I'm sorry, I know that's so basic.
It's basically a single stack version and shortened and chopped version of the larger service size Smith & Wesson M&P series.
Okay, I'm looking at pictures of the M&P. Okay.
So all the buttons and everything are the same, but it's going to be thinner and smaller and hold less bullets.
Okay.
Just for carry. Or, you could use it as a house gun, too. But, say you have the larger duty size, like a cop would carry, for instance, on his holster, M&P sitting at home on your nightstand at 45, and then you have a 9mm Smith & Wesson Shield, like JW said, smaller, chopped, less bullets, but you can easily carry it on your person.
So it's easier for you to pull a gun out of your purse and use, because you're only getting used to one style, is what you're saying.
Right.
It reminds me, like I was a professional photographer through college, and it reminds me of that kind of world in that the best camera for you is the camera that you have with you. And so if you're not going to bring this big old studio camera, then what use is it?
Right.
If you're going to bring your iPhone everywhere, then you can take great photos with your iPhone because you have it with you. It's similar with firearms in that you're not necessarily going to find the perfect firearm that fits every single one of those things.
Right.
So buy more than one.
Okay. Yeah.
There's things where these particular kinds of guns excel, and there's other places where they don't. Inside your house, it's awesome to have a flashlight attached to your gun. But if I'm wearing a suit, I can't necessarily conceal that full big duty gun with a flashlight and all of that, and so I might carry something smaller. So there's definitely choices to be made, but you don't need to feel like you need to make the ultimate perfect one gun for every situation sort of a decision.
Yeah.
And having the ability to modify that firearm, like we said, with the grip, the grip replacements on the back, and that allows you to kind of adjust it to yourself. You may not have the perfect gun when you take it out of the box, but you can get pretty close to the perfect gun if you can modify it like that.
Well, no, I don't think I have too many other questions. I mean, that y'all brought up a lot of things I hadn't thought about, things I need to be doing that I can be doing on my own to get more comfortable and kind of accelerate my own knowledge in between range visits. There's also a Girl and a Gun group here in Houston. I know a lot of cities have groups like that are specifically for new shooters or just getting people together to bring them into the sport. And I'm going to look into something like that just to get a little more exposure and a little more experience. So yeah, I appreciate y'all's patience too with me.
Oh well,
Some
no
of my
problem.
questions
And
are
don't
so basic.
And don't think that this is the end of the saga that is Carol Gets a Gun, because we have just scratched the surface, and there will surely be more episodes of Gun Guy Radio and some of the other shows that discuss this. So be sure to tune in to hear about everything.
Yeah, we're doing a video series on it. Like, that's one of the reasons I'm taking my time too, because we want to document it, and it's going to be not just audio, it's to be actually specifically for video, just a bunch of pieces of the journey. So yeah, this is how far we are so far, but I think it'll be fun to go back and see some of the missteps and some of the things that in our thinking. It should help people who are overwhelmed. You're not alone. There's at least a right way to get more knowledgeable about it, and I'm learning what that is with y'all's help. So yeah, that'll be coming out.
For sure. Excellent. Yeah. So
I do have one other question.
Yeah.
And I asked you guys before, how come you're not joining us for Tough Mudder, the Firearms Radio Network Tough Mudder, which is June 7th in Nashville, Tennessee. And I got a bunch of hum-haws, but I don't think any of y'all are coming, right?
Like we said, me and Handgun Newbie will be down there with the smokers and pork roasts, and we'll be covering those in bacon and making delicious pulled pork. And then when you're finished, you can come over and have some of it.
I'm all over that, if y'all really will. That would be fantastic.
Tailgating the Tough Mudder.
We'll be near the finish line, because that's the only way. That's the only way we'd get to the end of the race.
No, it's gonna be great. We have the guys from We Like Shooting. I know Aaron's doing it. We have about 12 people now, and a lot of us have never met each other. It's a lot of listeners, and over half the team has never done one before. And we always tell everybody, you have till June, and it's really just about getting good with like 10 to 12 miles of walking with a little jogging and a lot of stopping. And yes, there's some obstacles that you can choose to do.
Man, I see people climbing over walls and swinging on ropes and stuff.
Yes. I'm not making it sound very tough. It is very tough. But you wouldn't want to do anything that's not wise. Like if you haven't trained for something, they do allow you to walk around it. They don't advertise that, but you can. I'm just saying anyone can do it, because that day is about helping each other. You help each other over the walls. You help each other, encourage each other to swim through ice and run through the electrical shock wires. It's very encouraging.
So you're trying to sell this to us, and you're bringing up the electrical shock wires?
You don't know how much fun it is. There's a guy. I want y'all to go to episode 80. It's posting by the time this show comes out. It for sure will. So that's Fat2Fit, the number 2, fat2fithq.com/080. There's a gun guy on there. His name is Jack Templin. And I call Jack our VIP listener because he's the first person that ever recognized me at a hangout, at a like a listener meetup. So he's right up there. He's our number one guy. But really, he started listening to Firearms Radio Network. He was listening to all the shows about a year and a half ago, and he came across our show, and I think he just listened to it because there were some gun guys with me on the show. And Jack, by the time he came to the NRA show, where I told you nobody knew me. I was very new to the network, but Jack was like, hey, you're the positive one. And so I love Jack. He had lost 35 pounds just from listening to our show and taking our advice to listen to these other health shows, because we're more entertainment, and we point you in the direction of where you can learn stuff, right? So Jack lost 35 pounds. Well, he's doing Tough Mudder with us. And about 2 months ago, no, it was last month, there was a little obstacle run here in Houston, and he said he was going to come to get ready for Tough Mudder. He's lost another 30 pounds. He's lost 40 pounds. He's lost 75 pounds in a year and a half. And he was on my show this week. It's amazing. He talks about your firearms and how important it is for him to be a little better shape, for his precision, to just be able to do the 8 miles of walking he did when he was hunting last weekend. All kinds of things, the way that it's all intertwined, your fitness and your firearm, is just very interesting. So Jack Templin is just a hero to me. And he's doing Tough Mudder. So you guys ought to come out and do Tough Mudder. I'm telling you.
You're going to make us feel guilty, Carol.
It's going to be so much fun. I just really encourage people. There's a lot of people that listen across the world who can't come, but they're doing their own little 5Ks or obstacle runs and reporting in, and that's the whole show is just about community and staying motivated to try something. Nobody over there is an expert. So you know who was on the show was Gunny. You know Gunny, Arlie Emery. Everybody knows Gunny, Arlie Emery.
I remember listening to it, and I was like, just like a little schoolgirl when you read my question off to him and he answered it.
I know. Me too. I thought he was just great. And it was so crazy. Toward the end of the show, he started talking about how he eats wheatgrass and kale and he juices and all these things that you think are just for hippies. And he's so not. It's Gunny. Wow. So anyway, we're having fun over there. You'd be amazed how much crossover there is. Another guest I'm going to have, and you guys probably know him, is JJ Racaza, and he's a Top Shot winner. Do y'all know who that is?
Yep, he wasn't he the spokesman for Caracal for a while?
Is he? He's coming on in a couple of weeks, and he told me, don't ask me about my diet, because it's not good. So I'm telling you, nobody over there is perfect. But he's doing CrossFit now, and he's been doing CrossFit for a while, so there's this new event, this new event, a competition, where it's 3 gun style shooting and CrossFit together. And if you know CrossFit, the big guy in that, Rich Fronig, was like the CrossFit winner of the Olympic CrossFit Games or whatever, the big CrossFit Games. So they were both in this competition where you're doing this CrossFit but also with firearms. And JJ won it. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes of today's show with a YouTube short of those guys doing the CrossFit with the firearms. Very cool. Very, very cool. So y'all check that out. And then listen later to Fat to Fit later this month when we have JJ on. That'll be great.
Excellent. So
any more guilt I can throw y'all's way about?
I think we've gotten our dose for this week.
Well, maybe this is just showing Jake's sixth sense of humor. So he has on this beautiful fit, attractive woman.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, you. And then there's us 3 guys. Like, is this like his sixth sense of humor? Like, let's put on our fat to fit HQ person that's all in shape, and let's pick like the three like biggest guys.
Get the heck out of
You
here!
know?
And your Freudian slip is making me mad. Because I still have my Christmas weight, and all the listeners know because we all took a break at Christmas, and I'm trying not to do anything real unhealthy to get the weight off.
I've been on break since Christmas, like '94.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but it kind of went awry there.
Hey, I'm down about 20 since like right before Christmas.
That's
I'm
so
working on it.
awesome. JW, you have got to come on our show because
Okay.
that's not nothing, and we want to hear what's working. We say totally contradictory things. We'll have paleo people on, and then we'll have somebody who's doing a juicing thing, and then we'll have somebody who's just counting calories, trying to starve themselves. You know, we're just trying to hear what is working for different people because it'll inspire somebody. It inspires us. I think that's the biggest thing. Is just
I definitely haven't gotten too fancy. Just trying to eat less and move more.
There you go. There you go. Everything is different for everybody, and I really do think it's that. Keep it simple, whatever is simple for you, and staying motivated. So that's all we're doing. Well, great. So I have another guest. JJ's coming on. We got it. Everybody.
I've cooked 10 pounds of steak since Christmas.
That's good stuff. You know, protein is important. That's another crossover with your firearms. They always talk about well-sourced protein. What's more well-sourced than you shooting it yourself? I mean, that's
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, cook it up and bring it. Like you said, you're gonna be cooking for us. And
definitely. All right, so we're gonna head into the wrap up here, and we're also sponsored by Duluth Trading. So head over to gunguyradio.com/Duluth. And be sure to order some longtail tees and ballroom jeans, among other great clothing items from Duluth Trading. And this week we have the YouTube channel of the week, and this week I've picked the Duelist 1954 channel. I personally have been a subscriber to his channel for quite a while, and he has a really great channel. Covers early and modern firearms as well as modifications and reviews of such items. The guy's name is Mike Bellevue, and he's a really good showman too. He keeps the viewer interested with his funny comments and his interesting camera angles. He is a writer for Guns of the Old West magazine and Combat Handguns, and he brings a lot of his work from the magazine over to the YouTube channel. For instance, right now on his recent uploads, he has shooting the regripped Star Super Model B 9mm, shooting a Colt 357 double action trooper or a Webley, and then he goes from that to shooting 4440 cartridge revolvers or black powder handguns and rifles. So it's really a great channel, and be sure to go over there and check that out, Duelist 1954. So also we have Ryan Cross. He is the Hunter of Design, and he makes all the artwork for the Firearms Radio Network. So be sure to go check that out, hunterofdesign.com, and he really makes some great artwork. He's done the artwork for Gun Guy Radio, did it for Handgun Radio, and most of the other shows on the network. So be sure to go check that out, hunterofdesign.com. And feedback, please share your thoughts by leaving a comment at the bottom of the show notes or the YouTube video for this week's episode. And remember to subscribe to us on iTunes so that you never miss a show, and please leave us a review there as well, gunguyradio.com/iTunes. And remember, those reviews help us in the show standings and the iTunes standings, so be sure to go over there. Join the NRA. There's a link in the show notes, and don't forget to join the Second Amendment Foundation. And also, don't forget to shop Brownells using our affiliate link, gunguyradio.com/satisfaction. And you can also now contribute to the show by shopping Amazon.com via our affiliate banners or link, firearmsradio.tv/Amazon. And also, don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Firearms Radio Network. You can subscribe and listen for free at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. And one of those shows that you should go over to listen to is Greg over at Tactical Paradise. And I hope you listen to Greg so you can hear that, because I've been trying to do that so you hear it. So.
It sounded exactly like him.
So be sure to go check that out. They talk about all things tactical, and Greg puts on a really great show with a lot of interesting information and different points of view that you may not have thought of. He does a really good job analyzing everything. So be sure to go over there and check that out. So. Where can we find you guys? How about we'll start with you, Handgun Newbie?
Well, you can find me at youtube.com/handgunnewbie, Handgun Newbie on Facebook, and then of course our podcast, which we're in the middle of joining Firearms Radio Network. In fact, today actually we just got our Hunter of Design. We were talking about Ryan Cross there. Just sent over a couple different logos for us for joining Firearms Radio Network. So and all of them were absolutely fantastic, top notch, and so that we're really, really close to fully joining the Firearms Radio Network. So, but for right now, all you got to do is go to iTunes and search Practically Tactical, and you can find us, or, go to Facebook and just search Practically Tactical, and you can find us there, and at our Facebook page will lead you to our podcast. So, there's like a million ways to find me, so.
Excellent. And how about you, JW?
Yeah, I just started up on the AR-15 podcast. Last week we did a great show on silencers, which is a pretty in-depth world with a lot of paperwork and legal stuff, but we got right into it. And you can find those podcasts at ar15podcast.com. And that's about it. If you want to listen in live to the AR podcast, we record on Monday nights. I want to say like 9:30 Eastern, somewhere in there. And so if you go to the firearmsradio.tv/plus, that'll take you over to Google Plus. And right about the time when we start recording, there will be like a little show that pops up, and you can join, and we can have a little repartee live on the air.
Excellent. Great. And Carol, I know you mentioned it before, but how about you?
Yeah, we're over at fat2fithq.com. And you can also find some videos at fat2fithq.com/YouTube. But definitely in iTunes, you can find us. Just if you get in the Firearms Radio Network, you'll see we're one of the shows on there. And we started about a year and a half ago with Jake Challand, who's the president, and a guy named Zach Carlson, who was on Gun Guy Radio back then. They were the original Gun Guy Radio guys. And they did this show to just chronicle their journey. And it kind of took off, and now it's this community of people, and we're off air. We're in groups like MyFitnessPal and Fitbit, and just encouraging each other all week. And we have a mix of experts and community members that come on and do the show with me now. It's a lot of fun. So we'd love to have you guys come over and check us out.
Excellent. Sounds like a really great thing you have going over there. So
we're having fun.
And as always, I'm Ryan Machad. You can find me at Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network. It's handgunradio.com, or also on iTunes, and the corresponding YouTube channel for Handgun Radio's videos, Ryan Machad. Just search that on YouTube and you should be able to find it. So that about wraps it up for this week's episode of Gun Guy Radio, episode 109. I just want to thank you all for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course, had a great time.
Yes, thanks. It was awesome. Nice to meet everybody, too.
Yeah.
Yes, nice to meet you, too. So, as always, thanks for a great show. Have fun and safe shooting.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.